It's coming.
All these voices. All these voices. All these things you can't explain. All these painful memories. They keep haunting you. It's haunting me. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoking gasoline. It's just a ghost of you and me. Of you and me. All these whispers.
My name is James Hershey. Right back.
All these shadows in my mind. With my reflections I can't find. It's just a ghost of you and me. It's just a smoking gasoline. It's just a
That ought to
ghost
do
of
it.
you and me. Of you and me. Don't let 'em take you away. Don't let 'em bring you down inside. It's just the mirrors in your mind. Don't let 'em bring you down.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Staring into the Abyss. I am your host, horror author James Hershey Jr., and with me, as always, my co-host, old boy James Ash. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing pretty good. How's everybody doing tonight?
Tonight's episode is going to be interesting. Before I get to it, though, I want to say something to everybody. We have been working on a new TV show, and we have been extremely, extremely busy. And last week, we had the lovely psychic ladies on, which was a really, really fun and wonderful show. But it wasn't our ordinary show where we do a ton of research and really delve deep into a subject. It was basically, for me at least, like a week off. Because I didn't have to do a whole lot other than show up and talk. It wasn't like there was a lot of homework to do. And I've been putting in like 50, 60 hours a week on this TV show, trying to get it up and running and make it good so that everyone will enjoy it when they watch it. So this almost feels to me like a homecoming of sorts. And I have to tell you, it feels pretty damn good to be back in this chair. You know, to put this headset back on and to be coming to every one of you in your living rooms or wherever you listen to the show and visiting for a spell. I just want to let you know that I do not take this for granted. This show, our audience, every single one of you mean a great deal to me. And it almost feels like a reunion, you know, like I'm finally coming back home after a long vacation. So I am very, very happy to be home. So with that being said, on tonight's episode, we're going to be talking about a little thing called the Dyatlov Pass Incident. A lot of you may know it as the Russian Yetti incident. This is an interesting one because I had almost completely forgotten this even existed, like it had even happened. When Old Boy first brought this up to me, we were talking on Facebook, and he said that one of our listeners had recommended this as a show topic to do, that they would like to hear more about it. And he asked me if I knew anything about the Russian Yeti, and I was like, well, I know about Russian Yetis, that, you know, they have their own version of Bigfoot there, but are you talking about a specific thing, or what are you talking about? And he said, no, it's a Russian Yeti attacked a bunch of students. The official name for it is the Dyatlov Pass Incident, and it happened back in the late 50s. And the basic story is that there were these 9 hikers, which were students, who went up there into the mountains in Russia there. I could give you the name of the mountain, but it's very, very hard to pronounce. It's like Kolat Siakal or something like that. But that's not really important to the story. Basically, the 9 hikers, they went up into the mountains there and they camped. And for whatever reason, at some point in the night, they just kind of ran out of their tent, buck naked almost. They didn't have much on, very, very little clothing, in the middle of winter with snow all over the place and freezing temperatures, and they all ended up dead, basically. Now, you might say, well, that makes sense. You can't go out in the freezing snow in your underwear and expect not to end up dead. I agree 100% with you. But there was a lot of very strange things that went on with this. You know, if it was just them going out in the snow half naked and freezing to death, you could say, well, you know, they're students. Maybe they're partying. You know, they got a hold of some bad drugs or something. They got a little, you know, torqued up and off into the snow they went and they froze to death because they're just, you know, dumb kids. That's what kids do. But the stuff that went kind of haywire with this, the weird stuff, basically has everybody baffled. Nobody can really figure out what the hell happened there. And I'll explain a little bit of what I mean. 6 of the 9 died from hypothermia, which is what you would expect. Now, like I said, it doesn't make sense to run out in your underwear in the freezing snow, but if they were high or drunk or something, maybe they do something dumb like that. Who knows? Maybe something came and scared them, some kind of animal, and they didn't feel safe in their tent, so they ran out. That makes sense. But the others had signs of very, very severe trauma. And when I say severe, I mean severe. One of the victims had a fractured skull, and another had brain damage. But listen to this, he had brain damage, but no apparent signs of damage to the skull whatsoever. No signs of a head injury, but his brain was all jacked up. Also, one of the female team members had her tongue and her eyes both missing. They were gone. Now, one thing I'll tell you from being a mountain guy that is always in the woods, I spent a lot of my life out there. That is not uncommon for scavengers. The first things they'll go for is the tongue and the eyes because they are the soft bits, the easy bits to get to. So that it's not unusual that they would be gone. If this woman died and the body was out there any length of time, the eyes and the tongue would be missing. So that part does make sense. Now, this was investigated by all the authorities, and they did an extensive investigation trying to figure out just what the hell happened here. The conclusion that they came to was that it was, quote, an unknown compelling force that had caused the deaths. So I guess that's kind of saying something cracked these people up pretty good, but we don't know what the hell it was. You know, that's kind of just fancy talk for saying, you got me. I don't know. Something bashed on them real good. We don't know what the hell it was. They closed off the area to all of the amateur hikers and the different expeditions that were trying to go there for like 3 years after this had happened. And the reason it's called Dyatlov Pass is it's after the leader of that group, whose name was Igor, I believe, Igor Dyatlov. Some of the strange things, like I said, one, the no-tongue woman, but I can rule that out as being very, very strange because that makes sense with predators. And with scavengers, they will take the soft bits. But the second thing that was very weird was there was a mysterious orange tan on all of the dead bodies. And that is I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a moment when I get down to the last item. But there was a mysterious orange tan on everybody. The tents were ripped up. So that would make you think of some sort of wild animal attack or some sort of creature that had attacked them, or maybe even an avalanche or something like that maybe came down and got them. But there was no record of any avalanches in that area happening for like a long, long time. So it wasn't a common thing to have happen. 3 of the 9, like I said, had extreme crush damage to their bodies, and the others did not. And the last thing that kind of, I think, goes along with that orange tan is there was traces of radioactivity on every body. So they were radioactive for some reason. Now, there's a ton of different theories on what happened to these people. And this ranges all the way from space aliens came down and killed them, and that would explain the radioactivity, because in a lot of alien reports you have radioactivity involved. To a simple animal attack, that would explain the ripped tents, and if it's a large enough bear or something, it could explain the crush injuries to the skulls. I don't think it would explain the severe brain damage with no skull trauma, though. That's a weird one. That doesn't make sense as far as a natural explanation to debunk this. So I think what probably would be the best thing to do, the best starting point here, instead of going off into conspiracy theory land, which we could gladly do, don't get me wrong. I love conspiracy theory stuff. I just can't get enough of it. I love to watch it. I love to listen to it. I love to mess around and try to figure out what happened and what's right and what's wrong. It's just great for the detective in me. I love it. But I think we need to look at some evidence first before we go off on that tangent, because then we won't know what we're talking about when we get there if we haven't reviewed the evidence. So I think a smart way to do this would be to actually go over the official timeline that was put out by the investigators of the events as they believe they happened. Okay, so on January 25th, 1959, the group arrived at Ivdel, which is a central city of the northern province of a word I cannot even get close to pronouncing, Sverdlovsk or something. And that's where they stayed the night. January 28th of 1959, Yuri Yudin becomes ill, and he turns back. So he doesn't go with everybody else. The others continue going towards the place where they will eventually end up dead, but he turns back. Yuri does. February 1st, 1959, they reach the slopes, and they set up camp about 10 miles from their eventual destination where they were headed, which was Gora Otorten. So they were about 10 miles away from that, and they set up camp. February 1st, 1959, and it was estimated around 9:30 to 11:30 p.m. in that time frame. That's when the investigators believe that the events that ended up costing these people their lives actually began. Now, the timing of this is calculated based on the undigested food in the stomachs of all the dead people. So basically, the group of students who were not dressed very well at all. They did not have all of their snow stuff on that they hiked in. They had taken all of that off. They were settled in for the night, is what it seems, because it's late at night, and they are basically in their underwear / long johns, kind of pajama outfit kind of things. They either cut or they rip through the side of the tent and run outside. That's what the investigators believe. But also there's a possibility, and this is me talking, that whatever was attacking these people, whether it was a Bigfoot, whether it was some sort of monster, creature, wild animal, whatever it was that was attacking them might have ripped through the tent. And then they flee. That's also possible. The tracks that they found in the snow suggest that when the group fled the tent, they ran in all different directions. So they scattered. They didn't stick together. They took off all over the place. But later on, all the tracks converged back to the same basic areas. So they ran away in different directions and came back together at some point. February 1st, 1959, in between 10 and 11, they light a fire. Most likely that's because they are in their underwear in freezing temperatures with a ton of snow on the ground. So they got to get warm, I imagine, at this point, because if this thing started at 9:30 and you're talking 10 now, you got a half hour that you're outside in the cold in your underwear. Your hands are going to be going numb. You're going to be losing dexterity in your fingers. You're not going to be able to operate a lighter very well within the next 5 or 10 minutes. So it is imperative. You have to have a fire or you will freeze to death. So they light a fire. Investigators think that for around 2 hours, they stayed right where they were at the fire and warmed up. There is a very large pine tree that is a little bit lower than the campsite, and it had broken branches going up the pine tree. So that would indicate that they tried to climb up the tree to see if they could view what was happening back at the camp, to see if it was safe to go back to their tents, gather their clothing and their supplies, and get the hell out of there. Most likely. That's what I'm thinking. That would also indicate to me that they were being cautious here. They didn't just walk back to the camp and see if it was okay. They climbed the tree to try to get a bird's eye view from farther away to see if it was okay to return. That means that whatever happened at that camp scared the hell out of them. They were afraid to just walk back to the camp. So that means it had to be some sort of an attack that took place. I am ruling out avalanche off my list here because it doesn't make sense. If you have an avalanche is not going to come cascading down the mountain, rip holes in your tent, and you're going to run away. It's going to bury everything. So you're not running away and climbing a tree or anything at that point. You are underneath a ton of snow. So I don't think avalanche is the answer. I think that one can be eliminated here because they climbed the tree, they made a fire, they got away. But we think that they were definitely afraid or at least cautious to go back to camp. So that means animal attack, that means creature attack, monster attack, Bigfoot attack, alien attack, some sort of soldier's attack. Something was attacking them. Something was trying to harm them, to cause them to flee and be afraid to return to that camp. So at this point, they're getting desperate, and investigators think that they were disorientated. So 3 members of the team tried to return to the tents. That was Igor, Zenaida, and Rustam. Now, at this point, they're already almost dead from hypothermia and probably, honestly, fear and stress probably played a big role in draining them, and also possibly some injuries sustained in the initial attack. So they do not make it back to the camp, and they end up falling and dropping dead at various points on the way back to the camp. Now, February 2nd, 1959, it's estimated around midnight to 1 o'clock. So it has just turned February 2nd. The leader of the team doesn't come back. He doesn't reemerge. The people that were left behind waiting to see if they made it to the tents and came back, they end up dying while they were waiting. That's 2 of them died at this point, Georgie and Yuri. They died from hypothermia while they were sitting there waiting. About a half hour later, in between 12:30 and 1:30, the members of the group, the students that are still alive, take the clothes, as few as they may be, that the people that had already froze to death were wearing, off of them, and put them on themselves to try to stay warm. Dubinia wraps her feet with the trousers of one of the people. So finally they make the decision that they're not going to be able to get back to camp. So whatever clothing, supplies, all that stuff they have back there is lost at this point. So they make the decision that they're going to move further away from camp into the woods to try to get away from whatever the hell it was that caused them to run away from camp in the first place. They go a little way and they get really, really cold. They huddle together to try to stay warm. And at this point, Nicholas dies. Instead of getting up and moving again or trying to light another fire, I imagine at this point, they can't even feel their hands or feet anymore. So as far as trying to light a fire, you're not going to be able to. So instead of trying to move, they just continue waiting, and Dubinia dies, the one that wrapped her feet. She died from hypothermia, but investigators also say that she had massive chest injuries as well. So it's a combination of the 2 that killed her, one or the other, or maybe both. Alexander takes her coat and her hat and puts it on and tries to stay warm. In between 12:45 and 1:45 in the morning, Alexander dies. He died from a combination also of massive chest injuries and hypothermia. February 12th, 1959, a full 10 days later. This is the date where the students were supposed to arrive in the town of Vichy where they were headed and send a telegram letting everybody know that they were there. But they did not arrive because they're all laying dead up in the mountain. So this is the first clue for everybody that something's not right here. Where are these students at? They're supposed to be here. They're not here. February 20th, 1959, 8 days after they were supposed to arrive, the families of these students pressure the management of the Institute into sending out search and rescue parties to try to find them. So this is a full 18 days after they died that they finally sent out search parties. So even if they hadn't died, even if they hadn't been attacked and they were just simply lost and trying to survive, 18 days in sub-freezing temperatures without adequate supplies, not much chance at this point of them even being alive. February 21st through the 25th, 1959, the search parties are having no luck. They can't find them. And that results in the military and the civilian authorities becoming involved in the search. The first sighting of the students is made by the pilot of one of the search planes. On February 26, 1959, the searchers find the abandoned camp. The tent was really badly damaged. It was ripped to pieces. And you could still see the footsteps of these students. Right at the edge of the forest under that large pine tree, they found the remains of the fire, along with the first two dead bodies. The bodies were shoeless, and they were dressed only in their underwear. The branches that they were lying under were broken at about the height of 5 meters. On the trunk of the tree, the forensics team found traces of skin and other tissue. This evidence would suggest that they climbed the tree and broke off the branches on the way up. What we were talking about earlier, thinking they were probably trying to get a look at the camp to see if it was safe to go back. February 26, 1959, 300 meters from the fire and in the direction of the tent, searchers find the body of Igor. He is laying on his back with his head towards the tents, and one hand is holding a small birch tree branch, and the other is shielding his head. So it seems like he was trying to defend himself. He had a branch in his hand, and he had his other hand guarding his face. 180 meters from the body of Igor, the searchers find the body of Rustam. He is laying face down in the snow, and he was also found to have a skull fracture of about 17 centimeters in length. Another 150 meters from the body of Rustam, and even closer to the tent, that's where they found the body of Zenaida, and there's blood around her. May 4th, 1959, the second group, which is the ones that did not go back, that tried to get away, they are found buried in a ravine under 4 meters of snow. Ludmila is found to have a symmetrical fracture of several ribs, and Alexander is found to have broken ribs only on the right side. Once again, their official finding was a compelling unknown force caused the deaths. The actual translation of what they put is force majeure, and that basically just means that it is something that was a very significant injury, but that they cannot explain, which is what I said earlier. Something bashed them up real good. They don't know what the hell it was. I said earlier also that the pass was closed for 3 years afterwards. A lot of people look at that and they say cover up. They say, oh, look, it was closed because the government was involved or space aliens or whatever. The official statement said it was just done for public safety because they don't know what happened out there. And they didn't want just normal people wandering around out there and getting hurt, which makes sense. Now, I'm not saying it wasn't space aliens or Bigfoot or SEAL Team 6 or who knows. But that's what the official statement was as far as why they closed it. Now, I had said that there was multiple theories of what could have happened. One of those theories is the Mansi warriors. This is a group of Siberian tribesmen that live in the area, and one of the theories is that those people found them and murdered them. The problem with that is they're not really known to be violent people, those tribesmen. They're not, there's really no track record of attacks that they've done on people. And some of the the injuries, the force required to cause some of those skull fractures is just more than a human being is going to be able to generate. So I would mark them off the list. Alien attack. That's another conspiracy theory I talked about earlier that people think is responsible for the death of these people. Now, this one's interesting because a guy named Lev Ivanov, who was the lead investigator on the case, this is what he believed happened to the people out there. He believed that it was an alien attack. He based that on reports that he had collected from another group of hikers that were camping about 30 miles south of these students. And these other hikers said that they claimed that they saw strange orange spheres flying through the sky that night. So Ivanov, the lead inspector, believes that that's connected to the death of the students. He believed that what those other hikers saw were most likely alien spaceships, and that is what happened to the students. Now, is that true? Well, we can't know for sure. We weren't there. We don't have any real solid evidence. Circumstantially, possibly. You have the report by the other hikers of seeing these things in the sky. You have the lead investigator saying this is what he thinks happened. Now, he wouldn't just say that. You know, if you're the lead investigator on a case, you're just not going to say some crackpot theory you don't have any basis of evidence for. Otherwise, you're going to look like an idiot and you're going to lose your job. So there's that. Also, there's the orange tan on the skin and the traces of radioactivity, both of which point to a possible alien encounter or alien attack. Am I saying it's aliens? I don't know. Honestly, I do not know. I know that aliens exist. Did they attack these students? It's possible. The evidence seems to point like it could be. Now, what kind of aliens? That's another good question, because your regular little grays and tall grays, they're not known for their brute force. They're more known for paralyzing you and their technology and doing experiments. They're not known for bashing you up real good. You know, this was a big brute of a thing that hurt these people. So if it was an alien, it's probably not an alien species that like what we would think. Another theory here is that it was a military experiment gone awry. And these people just kind of were in the wrong place, wrong time. Now, this theory could be that it was either some sort of biological weapon in the form of like a human-animal chimera, which we have documentation that the Russian government has worked on in the past, and so has our government. So that is a possibility. Something like that might have the strength of a bear and the attributes of all kinds of different animals. So it could be powerful enough potentially, if it's the right mix, to do the kind of damage that was done to these bodies. So that could be a possibility. The problem I have with this, though, is if that was the case, whenever you have any kind of thing going on with the military that's classified or top secret, there's going to be a cleanup team coming right behind it. Okay? What that means is if you had some sort of mutant creature created by the government that got loose somehow and killed these kids, you would have never heard this story. Because remember, it was like 20-some days before they even found them. It was 12 days before the families even said, hey, are you guys going to look for them or what? So that's plenty of time for the military to track this thing down. They would have found these kids. You know, they would have come upon this campsite when they were trying to track down the beast, and they would have cleaned that up. It would have went away. It would have disappeared. There's a long paper trail of the Russian spy agencies and the Russian government doing this. And ours as well. We are not innocent in this. In the United States, our government, CIA, all that, they do some horrible stuff too. So believe me, this would have gone away. You never would have heard about it. So I do not buy the military experiment theory or the human-animal chimera theory or the genetic mutation theory, because we never would know about it. It would just go away. It would disappear. They would clean it up. There would be some story that they must have been lost in an avalanche somewhere and the bodies were never recovered. That's what would have happened. You would not have known about it. The last theory that I want to really talk about is the Siberian Yetti theory. This is the one that the Discovery Channel did a special on it in 2014. I think it was called something like Russian Yetti, The Killer Lives, or Russian Bigfoot, The Killer Lives, something like that. This was the theory that the Russian version of Bigfoot, the Yeti, that it was responsible for the death of these students. Now, they found a camera at the site that was chock full of pictures of the students and their journey. It had pictures of them setting up camp. It had pictures of them on the trail. Had pictures of them, goofing off. None of those pictures really shed a lot of light on what could have happened there, with the exception of the very last picture on the roll of film. That last picture is of a blurry creature. Now, I have enhanced that photo. I've blown it up a million times. I've looked at it from every damn angle. Sometimes you see a face, sometimes you don't see a face. It's hard to tell what it is. But from the shape of the creature, the stature, the size of the creature, it does not appear to me to be a Bigfoot. It's simply not big enough. If it were a Yeti, it would be much broader. The shoulders would be a lot wider. It would be a lot beefier, muscular. It would be a lot taller. What it actually looks like to me is either one of the students in their snowsuit with goggles, and the picture is just slightly out of focus, so it appears ominous. And that's what I think it most likely is. Or it is a picture of some sort of military commando in a full battle outfit that's covered head to toe. It could be, but I don't think so. Because like I said, if it was that, those bodies would have never been found. Or the last thing is it is some sort of creature, either the Yeti or some other kind of monster that we don't even know about. That's always possible. But I think most likely that picture is a picture of one of the students. Because think about this, that's the last picture on the roll. And it was taken in the daytime. At least the early evening. There was still sunlight when that picture was taken. So put yourself in the place of these students. You are hiking up in the wilderness of the mountains. It is cold. It is isolated. Nobody's there. Nobody's going to hear you scream. Nobody's coming to help you. You're walking down the trail and you turn and you see a monster behind you. Most people's first instinct would be to haul ass, run, get the hell out of there. But on the off chance that you've got nerves of steel and you just have the presence of mind that you're going to take a picture of this thing, you take a picture, then you run, right? What you do not do is take a picture and then casually stroll a little, very short distance and set up camp for the night and get in your underwear and just hang out in the tent with a monster about 50 yards away. Why the hell would you do that? That makes absolutely no sense to me. If that picture is anything other than one of those students, they never would have stopped for the night. I know if I'm in that mountain and I see some sort of monster behind me like that, the first thing I'm going to do is reach for my handy-dandy 357 Magnum and put a hell of a big hole in it. And if that does not work, I'm going to put 5 more big-ass holes in it. If he's still smiling at me and calling me sweetheart after I put all 6 in him, then I'm going to turn around and I'm going to make a run for it. I'm not going to set up a tent. I'm not going to get in my underwear, hang out and play Jenga or whatever the hell they were doing inside that tent. It makes no sense to me. I think that little bit of logic completely destroys the whole idea of a Yeti, a Sasquatch, some other sort of monster or military commando or alien species or any of that stuff. I think that completely destroys it as far as being what that picture is. That picture has to be one of the students. If it is not, there's no way they would have stopped. they would have kept on trucking. They're only 10 miles away from the town they're trying to get to. If you got a monster behind you, are you going to camp or are you going to haul ass and try to make it 10 miles before it gets you? I'm not camping. I'm going. I'm fighting first. If I can't kill it, I'm going to make a run for it. That's logical. That makes sense. It doesn't make sense why they would stop. So those are the theories. That's what I think about it. I think a lot of those injuries were caused naturally. And I know that sounds nuts to everybody, but I'm going to explain that really quickly, and then we're going to pass over to Old Boy. They climbed that tree. Okay, something attacked their camp. Most likely some sort of bear, some sort of natural animal that lived there attacked that camp. Scared them. They took off running. They waited to see if it was safe to go back. Now, if it was some crazy monster or alien, would have you kind of just went, like a couple 100 yards away from your camp and waited? Or would have you just tore ass out of there and just kept on trucking? I don't think they would have waited around if it was something crazy, right? Some kind of monster, some sort of alien, some sort of military SWAT team. They would have ran for it. They would have waited to see. So they climbed the tree. They climbed up a decent height so they could see. The branches underneath of them were broken. So ask yourself, when did those branches break? Did they break when they were climbing up? If so, they had to jump down because there's no branches anymore for them to use as a base. They broke. And if there are branches, they are jagged as hell now. Or is it possible that they broke because a couple of them climbed up the tree to try to see what they could see and they fell? And they broke the branches on the way down, and that's what caused the injuries. I think that's possible. I think that's highly possible that's what caused it. Now, the one brain damage with no skull injury, that's weird. But that could be caused by falling and not directly hitting your head, but like a jerking motion, like a sudden stop jerking motion. Maybe that caused the brain to slam against the skull or something and cause the brain damage, but no outward signs of trauma. That's possible. So I think what happened here, I think we're dealing with an animal attack of some sort. I'm not, really, really familiar with the animals and the wildlife of that area, but I imagine there's probably bear there. I imagine there's probably some sort of big cat in the area. There are predators there. So I imagine that's what it was some some of predator ripped into the tent and scared the hell out of them. And they took off running exactly how they were, in their pajamas, underwear, whatever. Took off running, it's cold. They want to go back to the tent, but they don't know if that thing's still there. So they climb up a tree to see if it is. They fall, they hurt themselves, and they try to make it back to the tents. And by that time, they freeze. Maybe they looked and they didn't see anything at the camp before they fell, and that's why a couple of them tried to make it. But they froze to death because they were out there too long. And then the other ones, when they didn't come back, they thought the worst, that whatever had attacked the camp got them, so they went the other direction. And they froze to death and died from their injuries, one of the two, or both. I think that's what we're dealing with here. I think it's completely explainable. I don't think this one is paranormal or supernatural at all. I think what we're dealing with is a plain old animal attack. Probably because them being students and kids, they were probably goofing off in the tent, making a lot of noise, and they drew a predator to them, and that's what happened. And that's my ruling on it. So I'm going to throw over to Old Boy now and see what he has to say and what he thinks. And take it away, brother.
And thank you, brother. And I want to thank Nanny, one of my coworkers. She's the one that told me about the Russian Yetti story. So I want to thank you. I wanted to give a second real quick to thank her for this, because this is a good show. And I have a little bit of different opinions on this thing. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But thank you very much for this. I remember this years ago. I seen pictures of this, and I forgot about it. Just like James said, I had forgot about this whole ordeal. Now I remembered when she told me, and I'm like, man, I wonder if I heard about that. And I looked it up. I'm like, oh gosh, yes, I've remembered that. It's something we didn't even think of, and forgot about for probably years. I haven't remembered hearing the story since I was in high school, because I remember I got this book, and it would talk about all paranormal, ghost, Bigfoot. I forget what it was called, but it was like some kind of but it was just like all kinds of creatures and phenomenon and stuff like that. And I remember seeing pictures of this. So let me get to what I think this is and what I think could have happened. You have 9 kids, and it was in 1959 in Russia. It was very cold, snow everywhere. You have kids that got attacked, and then kids who ran away from the camp. Here's one of the things I'm going to say. If it was a human being, there would have been more than just broken bones and stuff like that, and people ran away. They would have caught them eventually. So I don't believe that. I don't believe they're animals either, because the problem I have with this is it would have been more worse than what it was. They would have been tore up, eaten. Not everything does. Sometimes bears don't do that. But there would have been proof of something like that, scratching up the tent. They could never prove what scratched up the tent. And there is a possibility that it could have been something. But it would have caught these 3 kids that got away. Even if they got up on top of the tree, a bear can climb. So that's why I don't believe it's a bear. It might have been a wolf, but there would have been tracks. See, that's the one thing. They didn't say they found any tracks of an animal. So that is what weird. And then the lady with the fracture, she fell into snow. And yes, there's a possibility, but nothing touching her, that's weird. Now, do I think it was aliens? There's maybe a 10% chance. Just like I think it may be a 15 to 20% chance on an animal getting them. Because of the whole radiation thing. So that's weird. That's the one thing that changes everything about this, because of the radiation they found on the bodies. The orange color they got off of the body. That's the only thing that changes this whole story of that. How did that happen? How did they get radiation out in the middle of Russia? So that goes into, was it a military thing? Were they doing experiments and they happenly, and what you're not thinking is maybe what people don't understand is maybe that guy in the suit or whatever the heck it is, I don't know what it is, was in a hazmat suit, and they walked onto these kids. They were doing some kind of experiments, and that's why they got the pictures. And they didn't mess with the kids till later on that night and went and that was their demise because they saw too much. And they made it look like it was an attack by some kind of creature. But you had the kid was frozen solid with like a piece of wood, and he had broken bones and stuff like that. But that sounds like there's more to this story than just an animal attacking. Because of the radiation, because of that picture. Yes, it does look like it could be one of the ski members in a ski mask, I mean. But then when you look at it, the arms are not right. That's the only thing that threw me off. When I first saw it, I thought it was a Cobra Commander, as the mask. It looked like Cobra Commander. I know you guys are going to laugh about that one from G.I. Joe. I'm like, is that Cobra Commander or a hazmat suit? Or is it a guy but then you look and we had a picture where you could see there's a face. That's what's so weird about that face. Doesn't make any sense. The whole picture doesn't make sense because the arms are wavy. And it could have been a guy in a hazmat suit. And that could have been a possibility. They were, back then, were doing stuff in Russia. We all know the military does things like this. And they could have walked on and seen something they weren't supposed to see, like an experiment. Or they saw the guy in the suit, and he took off. And then they came back and got him. But like James said, there would have been a cleanup. Do they just leave it like that to make it look like some accident happened or some creature got them? Or the Yeti or a wolf or a bear, that could be a possibility also. Or here's another theory: the creature, the thing, whatever it was in the camera, like you said, well, why wouldn't they run away from it? Because maybe, how the camera, it looks like it's on the ground though. Well, maybe they took it accidentally and they weren't paying attention, and the thing took off. Or I don't know what it could have been. It could have been a person in a suit. There's a possibility. I'm not going to roll that out. I think this is all crazy because if you look at everything, there's signs of it could have been a creature. There's signs it could have been an animal, or signs it could have been the military in Russia. Or there's signs it could be, with the radiation, that's a possibility with aliens or something from another dimension. Or here's another theory, or a creature that we don't even know of because of the wavy arms. That's the only thing that throws this off. And I know James is going to say something and after I'm done, but that's just my theory. Your theories are pretty good. I agree with some of them. I didn't say like I don't. I'm keeping a possibility because the whole radiation thing. That's the only, and then that lady not even being touched. Yeah, that could happen, but that's a very hard possibility, me being in the medical field, to happen. So I think maybe there was something seen and they weren't supposed to, and they were taken care of, or it could have been alien, or it could have been some kind of weird creature with arms, because they were saying like with the Thing, the movie, the original one, not the one John Carpenter did in '82, their original one in the '50s, and they made the Thing movie. That's where they redid it in '82 with Kurt Russell, and it was kind of a weird creature. It was pretty much kind of the same thing, but they were in Antarctica. But these kids, like, they were running from something, and it wasn't a bear or a tiger. I mean, not a tiger. There's no tigers, and I don't know what's in Russia. I'm sorry if I'm wrong. I know there's wolves, and I know there's bears, and I think there's some kind of cats out there, and it could have been that. But they could climb, and dogs. The only thing is, a wolf can't. But you would have seen on the trees scratches, or a wolf would have caught them because of their smelling. They could. That's what I'm saying. That's the only part I don't agree with. But there is a possibility it could have been a bear, but the bear would have climbed up on, or could have just ran away because, they didn't care anymore. But I don't know if it's a bear. I'm not going to say it isn't or isn't. So I'm kind of like, I'm going to be honest with you. This is the one where I'm undecided. I really don't know. I really don't know what to really say I'm wrong. I don't think there's really a wrong answer. I mean, unless you say like, lizards or something got him or something. But I don't know if there's a real clear 100% way to go on this. That's what I'm going to say. And I don't know. That's kind of weird because I'm usually always pretty agreeing with James, or I'm not disagreeing with him or agreeing with him. I'm kind of baffled on the whole story. I think it's really crazy story, but you could see James's point, but I can see other points too. The radiation's still one of the weirdest things out of it all. And then the girl with the skull, this fractured skull, and didn't get touched. Something had to do this. We're very strong, so it wasn't a cat or a wolf. So it had to be a bear. If it was a real creature, like real known, animal, not creature, animal, to break all these bones. And yes, they fell in the tree, but there are other people who didn't. So I'm coming to the conclusion I really don't know. I've looked at the pictures. I've looked at the evidence. I've listened to what James has had to say. It's very interesting, and I agree that there's so many possibilities. I have like 4 or 5 different theories of what this is, and none of them I really think are wrong. I mean, there's probably some lesser than others. I don't believe that humans did this. I will say that they're pretty good because they would have made it a little bit better. It could have been some weird cult or some crazy, here's another theory. It could have been a crazy murderer that went out there and killed them because there's people who knew they were going out there, like, in that village. So somebody could have been a killer and just made it look like something happened, because killers are very smart people. They're not stupid. So that could be a possibility too, especially in Russia. There's a lot of crazy people there, a lot of crazy ass people in Russia. So, some of them are in the woods for a long time, so they've probably done this before. Because there's bad things that happen in certain parts of Russia. You remember that, James. So that's a possibility, too, that I was thinking. But like I was saying, no disrespect or nothing. I don't have a clear 100% answer on this one. And I know that's probably going to drive you crazy, but that's just my opinion.
No, it doesn't drive me crazy at all. But a few of those things that you said actually can be explained, at least a possibility of being explained. Bears have been known to attack campsites when you're in your tent, and they will literally rip right through your tent, bite you on your head, drag you out, gnaw on you for a little bit, and then just leave. And nobody really knows why the hell they do it. They're just jerks sometimes. They just like to do that for some reason. It's kind of funny because we always said back in the day that if you went out there and you camped just in like a sleeping bag, that basically you were just a bear burrito, because they'd come in and they'd gnaw on you. They love to do that for some reason. I don't know why, they just do. So that makes sense to me why the bear would attack. They would all scatter, and then the bear would say, it's not worth it. I'm not chasing him. Because it's not like he's hungry and going to eat him. He just wants to gnaw on him a little bit or bat him around or something. So that has been known to happen. I know it sounds crazy, but it's the truth. As far as the injury to the head, if you have a sudden stop, your brain is inside your skull and it's in fluid, so it will move and it will collide with your skull, and it can cause trauma without there being any outside trauma. That's essentially what concussions are, that like football players and stuff like that get all the time. That you can get a very bad concussion, and the cumulative effect of these concussions lead to basically brain damage over time, and there is no outward sign of trauma. So that is something also that is possible. If they fell out of the tree and landed hard, sudden stop, it's possible that they got a severe concussion, caused the brain trauma. That's a plausible explanation for that. As far as the radiation goes, in Russia there was a tremendous amount of testing of nuclear weapons. And the places where they test these nuclear weapons are in remote wilderness areas, away from population centers. That's what this is. Here in America, we usually test them out in the desert because nobody is out there, or at least not that many people are out there. In Russia, they don't really have desert, but they have these mountainous areas. You remember, this is up in Siberia, okay? This is up in that area. And if you remember back from the 80s, if you're old enough, Siberia was the place where they sent all the people that were criminals, the people that they wanted to banish. They would send them up into Siberia, to the prisons and stuff up there. So that is a cold, desolate place. They have done testing in that area. Now, I don't know if they've done testing on that particular mountain or not, but I know that they have done testing in Siberia. So what you could have had with this radiation is simply residual radiation from past testing. And these students ended up there, and that's how they have traces of radiation on them. The orange tint of their skin is a little bit weird. That can result from radiation poisoning, but I would think if it was residual radiation, the concentration might not be high enough to cause that kind of effect, but who knows? But there are things that with each one of those, it can be explained. It's not completely out of the realm of explanation. Now, am I saying that it's for sure 100% an animal attack? That's what I believe it was. But there's always a possibility it was something else. You can never fully say this is exactly what happened unless you were either there or you have video footage or something that can prove that that's exactly what happened. But all of those things can be explained. Now remember, not all of the students had crush injuries and force injuries. Some of them just died of hypothermia. So my theory is that some of them climbed up the tree. I think there was 3, I believe, that had really bad injuries. Maybe they were the ones that went up in the tree and fell. Or maybe one of them went up in a tree and fell, and the other ones were injured in the initial attack by the bear, or whatever it was. I think that's a possibility as well. And it very well could have been a Yeti that attacked the camp. What I was saying about the Yeti was that picture was not of a Yeti. That picture was too small to be of any kind of Bigfoot species, in my opinion. Now, one thing about the picture with the wavy arms old boy was talking about, remember that picture was out of focus. We tried blowing that picture up. We tried enhancing that picture multiple different ways, multiple different times. And we could never get the same picture twice. That was what was weird about it. In some of them, you could clearly see a face. In others, you couldn't see a face at all. It was just a smudge. And that makes me think that there were different versions of that picture. You had the original version, which was in the camera. And then I think that when the Discovery Channel did that special on it, I think they doctored the photo. That's the only thing I can say that makes sense. Somewhere along the line, that picture was tampered with. Because if it wasn't tampered with, if you take 2 versions of that picture, one from the poster for the Discovery Channel show, the advertisement, and one from the actual camera roll, and you blow them both up side by side, they do not look identical. In one there's a face, and one there's a smudge. So what I'm saying, that picture was doctored either by the Discovery Channel or they received a doctored photograph that they used. One of the two. Because it's not the same. The wavy arms, I think, can be caused by a combination of the picture being out of focus, because it was out of focus. It was blurry. And also, it's in the snow. And when sunlight hits the snow, it produces glare. So you take glare, you add that to out of focus, you're going to get a weird wavy look to it. So that's explainable as well. So I don't think there's anything. I think this is a weird story. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of elements to this story that make it seem very, very strange and make it seem like only a supernatural explanation can suffice here. And I'm not saying 100% sure it's not a supernatural explanation. I'm just saying it looks to me more like a natural event. It looks like they were attacked by some kind of animal, probably a bear or something like that. It had to be something strong enough to cause those injuries. And I think that's what happened. But we are just about out of time, so I'm going to throw over to Old Boy so he can do his shout-outs.
Well, one more thing is, do you also remember how you were saying it was Siberia was a prison? They sent people from prison. It could have been somebody escaped and did this. So, I mean, remember that theory, too. Just that's one more I got to throw out there.
Well, the only thing I have against the killer theory or somebody escaping a prison and doing it is it's sub-zero temperatures. So I don't think there's going to be that many killers that are out stalking people and trying to kill them when it's like -20 or something. I mean, it's cold as hell in Siberia. I mean, you don't mess around outside if you don't have to, and definitely not without proper equipment. So I just can't imagine there being some crazed killer that is wandering around. It would be like some guy wandering around in Antarctica or something trying to kill people. It just, to me, that seems real far-fetched.
True, but like I said, it's not impossible. But I want to give a shout out to everybody on Para X. I want to thank you for listening to us. Over 4,000 subscribers now on YouTube page, on James Hershey's YouTube page. So remember, subscribe. You guys know how to go. James Hershey Jr.'s YouTube. Go in there. You can listen to all our old shows and our new shows. And even from Tales from the Abyss, you know, we have the Go Bar one, and we're going to be bringing out the one in Victorville soon, like in the next week or so. And we're working on one or two more. So you guys will probably be happy about that. And we have the merchandise store, and he can give you guys tell you where to go on that. And again, I want to thank my coworker Nani for giving us the story. It's really great. It was really interesting, and thank you very much. I want to give her a shout out, and I want to tell everybody I love you. Happy Thanksgiving, because this is the week of Thanksgiving, and I want everybody to enjoy themselves. Whatever you believe, whatever religion, just enjoy the time with your friends and family and your loved ones. And I want everybody to have a great holiday. I love you, misfits, sugar ladies, monster hunters, and demon lovers. You guys have a great night and happy holidays. Happy Thanksgiving. Blessed be. Good night.
The YouTube channel is youtube.com/James Hershey Jr. The merchandise store is teespring.com/stores/staring into the abyss. That's teespring.com, teespring.com/stores with an S on the end /staring into the abyss. You got shirts, hoodies, the whole nine. Everything's there. Thank you guys for listening. We appreciate you. We love you so much. And have a happy Thanksgiving, man. Thanksgiving is a time where you give thanks for all the things in your life. You know, and I'm a man who's been extremely blessed in my life. You know, I want to give thanks for my wonderful wife. I want to give thanks for my family. I want to give thanks for my career, my books, all my readers, the listeners of this show, the people that watch the radio, the people that watch the TV show. I want to give thanks for Old Boy, my co-host, who's been my partner in crime for almost 2 years now. I love that guy, man. Thank you for being with me, dude. Thank you guys for listening. And until I speak to you again, love many, trust few, and do harm to none. God loves you, and so do we. Bye-bye.